The Indiana Fever's front office has been an absolute dumpster fire. An absolute dumpster fire, guys. We all know that. They look like they are lost. They have no clue what to do, where to turn, what's going on. President of basketball operations and business operations for the Indiana Fever, Kelly Krauskopf, took to the Query and Company podcast. Shout out to them. And she went in on how they're going to try to reinsert Caitlin Clark and get her back acclimated.
Kelly, from the Indiana Fever front office, recently appeared on a podcast and said something that has really upset fans. She talked about how long it will take to bring Caitlin Clark back into the lineup after her injury and rebuild the team's chemistry. But instead of saying the team should adjust to Clark, she suggested that Clark needs to adjust to the team.
Come to the front. I need to hear from you. What is going on with the decision making? What is the plan for Caitlin Clark? Because it looks like it's you guys' idea to try to build a team to win without her rather than getting supplemental pieces.
Let's talk about what Kelly Krauskopf just said on the Coron Company podcast, because this is one of those moments where the Indiana Fever front office accidentally showed exactly how they think about building a roster around Caitlin Clark. And honestly, it doesn't look great. When you really break down what she said compared to what she probably should have said, it raises some concerns about their approach.
Is my guest from the Indiana Fever. When you have a player like Caitlin Clark, that is, I don't need to tell anybody about what Caitlin Clark is, right? We know that. But even though she's practicing with her teammates, even though she's around it, even though she's she's pretty ubiquitous within the field house when you go to different events there. Mm-hmm. But that's different than being in games. How long does it realistically take over the course of a season when you are reinserting something that is that big a straw mixing the drink to an extent for everybody to get that cohesiveness on the floor together back once again?
Yeah, I mean, look, you've been around it a long time. You know, it does take a minute. But the thing about Caitlin that we've had a lot of great players here, she makes it so easy for everybody else because of her IQ, because of her passing ability, the way she sees the floor. I mean,
okay, because of her passing ability and because of her IQ, but Stephanie White wants the girl playing small forward.
The podcast host asked Krauskopf a simple question. When a player like Caitlin Clark comes back from injury, how long does it take for the team to build chemistry again? Clark missed a lot of time with a knee injury, so the question made sense. The team had to play without her, and now she is returning, so some adjustment is expected. But Krauskopf's answer stood out. She used the phrase, reinsert Caitlin Clark into the lineup. That wording is important because it suggests Clark is being added into an already established system, instead of being the center of it. That would mean the team already has its identity, and now they're just fitting her back in. Many people would argue that should be the opposite. Clark should be the focus, and the team should be built around her style of play.
You're saying doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. Like what are y'all doing over there?
I mean, she really creates a lot of ease on the offensive end, and just it's not that hard to play. You got to find the right players that kind of understand that, but it still does take time. There were moments last year when we were down the stretch where we were like, good Lord, imagine if we had Caitlin back and healthy. And then we were losing players along the way, but thinking about the opportunities ahead of us and knowing that, okay, if we get everybody healthy again, we lost Sophie partway through. I mean, she was shooting over 40% from the three, really helping us spread the floor. So there was a lot of optimism coming into this year, and knowing that when they get back out on the floor together, because we started seeing glimpses of it, when everybody's healthy and back on the court together, it's, we're hopeful it's going to take us a long way.
Supporters of the criticism argue that these choices don't fully address the team's biggest needs right now, especially if the goal is to compete immediately with Clark on the roster. Now, going back to Krauskopf's comments about reinserting Caitlin Clark, this is where a lot of the backlash is coming from. She talked about moments late last season when the team was dealing with injuries and thinking, imagine if we had Caitlin back and healthy. She also said that when everyone is healthy again, the team could go a long way. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. But the way it's framed still feels off. It sounds like they're talking about fitting Caitlin Clark back into an already existing system, instead of building the system around her. And that difference matters. It's not just wording, it reflects how the team is thinking. If the belief is that Clark has to adjust to the team, then roster decisions will naturally focus on players who fit the current structure. That means drafting and signing players based on roles within a set system. But if you see Clark as the main engine of the team, then everything changes. You would prioritize shooting to space the floor, strong bigs who can screen and finish, and defenders who can support her on the other end. The entire roster would be shaped around her strengths. Right now, the Fever's roster doesn't clearly reflect that approach. They've added a lot of guards, drafted more guards, and talked about bringing in additional guards, while the frontcourt remains thin. Aaliyah Boston is essentially carrying the center position with very little depth behind her. That kind of balance raises concerns, especially in matchups against bigger teams. The example fans often point to is teams like the New York Liberty, who have size and length across their lineup. Against that kind of structure, a guard-heavy roster can struggle badly in the paint and on the boards. Kroskov also mentioned possibly adding another veteran guard, which only adds to the confusion for fans who already feel the team is overloaded in that area. From their perspective, it doesn't solve the main issue, it just repeats the same pattern. Overall, the frustration comes from what the language suggests. The front office talks about reinserting Clark, building cohesion, and adjusting over time, but doesn't clearly emphasize building everything around her strengths. That disconnect is why fans are upset. It feels less like one or two questionable decisions and more like a deeper misunderstanding of how to build around a player like Caitlin Clark. In short, fans see Clark as the foundation of the team, while the messaging from the front office still sounds like she's just another piece to fit into an already built structure, and that gap is what's driving all the criticism.